Focus with Jack Caudill.
Good evening, I'm Jack Caudill. Welcome to this month's edition of Focus. This month we are talking about February being Black History Month. Three guests with us to talk about that. Bishop Troy Carr from the Faith Temple Church here in Rapid City, Richardson, one of the elders at Faith Temple Church, and Rhonda Lee, the chief meteorologist for KOTA Territory News. A little background before we get going. February is Black History Month, as we mentioned. Now, the beginnings of the month trace all the way back to 1915. A National Negro History Week first came to be back in 1925. That evolved into Black History Month by the late 1960s in some places around the country. President Gerald Ford officially recognized Black History Month for the first time in 1976, and that has become a presidential tradition since then. And this year's theme is Black Health and Wellness. We're going to start with you, Bishop Troy Carr. Thank you for coming up.
Thank you.
Why is Black History Month important?
Well, anything that's important, we memorialize. Our birthdays, our wedding anniversaries. And so this month, I think it's important to pay tribute to the history of the African American and the things that they did for this country.
And Richardson, one of the elders there at the Faith Temple Church, as you look at it, why is Black History Month important to be recognized here in the U.S.?
Sometimes we forget, whether we want to or not. Black History Month reminds us of the history of the black person, or the people of color, because there was a lot of things that went on earlier that a lot of people will forget. So Black History gives us an opportunity to come back and review those things and try to make it better.
Rhonda Lee, chief meteorologist here at KOTA Territory News. As you look at it, what's the importance of Black History Month?
Well, I feel like with these two gentlemen, it's the remembrance that's so important. And if you do not remember, you are bound to repeat it. And it's kind of unfortunate. I think a lot of times that we spend a copious amount of time rehashing issues. The civil rights movement, a lot of people think that it was over. It's not over. And I think that was pretty evident in 2020 with the now, I think, repackaged Black Lives Matter movement. It's no longer so much known as a civil rights era, but I feel like we've kind of taken different pieces of what used to happen in the past and have unfortunately repeated some of the atrocities, but we've made it a little more high-tech in some terms. I mean, the sad thing, I think, is a lot of times when you have Black History Month, the other 12 or 11 months sometimes kind of go by the wayside. But for me, there is no Black History Month. There is Black History 365, 366 on a leap year.
Personally, what does it mean to you that's recognized?
My history with Black History Month is pretty multifaceted, to tell you the truth. I mean, I grew up in an AME church, and my entire life, born and raised AME, and I participated in all of the performances. I had my speech. Everybody knows about the speech.
Easter speech.
Easter speech.
I always had my speech.
Buddy.
And I think that for me, I majored in American Ethnic Studies, and I quite often was the first, I still am the first, and I'm almost always the only. And I think that my experience being the one or half of the black population of an entire school district in junior high, the other half is my brother. Growing up, it really kind of peppered my outlook on racial everything. Now, I wouldn't even say just disparities. I think for me personally, I have a very love-hate relationship with racial incidences, and so I decided to embrace that. And you often hear meteorologists, they were scared of thunder, so they became a meteorologist. I think I dealt with so many racial issues growing up. I mean, I was nigger every day. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Every day in junior high school. Yeah. Wow. And wow. I think that carried my love of this topic into my adult life. Well.
Rich, what's it personally mean to you?
Unlike these two esteemed people, I was born in the early 50s. So I got to see racism after the Jim Crow, the beginning of a new era of racism, entering to a new era of racism until today. So I've seen the different facets of it and been a victim of it. Me being born in North Carolina, it's like, give you an example. A person asked me when everything was being recorded, how do you feel about seeing the black person get killed by the police? And my response was, I feel sorry for him, but it's not anything new to me because I was raised during a time where you can get up the next day and say, where's Pookie? Well, he got hung. And see, that was my childhood. And so when they graduated into the 20s, only thing different between now and my time was now they're recording it. So now we're getting history on recordings. When I was coming up, we were dying every day almost for no reason. And then what happens here is that people were comfortable with killing blacks and killing people of color, period, because there was no outcome to it. There was no recourse to it. There was no law against it. So now it's getting better because now the racism is either corporate or it's indirect, but we still face with racism. It's not different, it's just gotten better.
Bishop Carr, how about you? What personal things do you take away from
Well,
Black History Month?
I think when we talk about February, I categorize it as the good, bad, and the ugly. And I think the importance of this month is for people to get educated that Black History Month is not just about slavery. The African American has contributed so much to the building of the America in food and in music and in politics, so many black inventors, so many things that the African American has done good for this country. It's easily to be debatable that the African American built America with the human resources, even though we were slaves, but we did that. And then there's the bad. There's the killing of a black person where we actually witness someone go from being alive to being dead on camera. As Rich said, it's not, he would see it more times than not, but to actually be able to see it. And so that's the bad, the economic disparity in our neighborhoods. And so then we have the ugly. And I think the truth must be told within our community. What can we do? Where, the black on black crime and the unwed mother situations in our community. And so this month helps us, and for me to think about all those three areas: the good things that African Americans have done to our country, the bad things that have been done to us over the years, and the things within our own community that we need to get better.
How much of that is hidden away? How much of that, we talk about bringing out, people need to know, how much of that is hidden away that they don't know at this point?
It's a lot because, number one, it's not taught in schools. Again, it's just we were slaves and that's it. How many people know that that there was the rice in Carolina? You know about rice. That we have rice because of the African American community bringing that over from Africa. Okra. How many people know there are numerous inventors that we have? Jazz music, all kind of music, and all these different things that the African American has contributed, and we don't know it because it's not taught.
And I think that the teaching of that is now kind of under attack. And even right here in South Dakota, we've had it on our air numerous times. This whole idea that there is some boogie monster, boogeyman embedded in critical race theory, I think it's there. There is now, I feel like, a conscious effort to make sure that those ugly, the good, the bad, and the ugly, but more so the bad and the ugly, are hidden instead of taught. And I feel like a lot of times there's blame to be placed on the education of learning about those bad instances. And it's not necessarily, it doesn't have to be bad. It doesn't have to be ugly. It happened. Like I said before, unless we start talking about it more often, we're going to repeat it. We're going to have more George Floyds. We're not going to progress. We're going to be here in 20 years and Jack Caudill focus again. Maybe. Maybe then it'll go national, but we'll talk about this all over again. And so taking away education is, I feel like it's several steps backwards instead of moving forward.
And let me jump in and say, and that's why when people say, well, what's the big deal that Floyd died? They're not educated to know that this has been happening. Well, why are black people so upset? It's happened all these different years. And so if you don't know that, if you just think it's a new thing since yesterday, you're not going to appreciate the fact that people are frustrated that it's still happening from your age to now.
It's ironic that how are you going to change a situation when you don't learn about it? You just don't walk in the kitchen and bake a cake. You have to learn about all the things that it takes, the ingredients to make that. Same way with being a person of color. You have to know about me in order for you to appreciate where I'm coming from. You have to know about me in order for you to understand why I feel the way I do. And by you ignoring me and say I never existed, it's just another knife into my side. Learn what makes me tick, because if you look at it, if all the racism against blacks and people of color are erased, who's next? Because people who hate will find something to hate all the time. Racism will replace itself. If it's not black people, it's going to be people who don't have blonde hair. If it's not people who don't have blonde hair, it's people who don't have blue eyes. So racism is going to be there if somebody don't learn how to stop it.
All right, we got to take a break, and we'll continue our look at Black History Month when we continue with this month's edition of Focus. I'm Jack Caudill. Welcome back to this month's edition of Focus, talking about Black History Month, which is February. Now, the Black Lives Matter movement came to the forefront lately after the George Floyd was killed in Minneapolis. So, Richardson, one of the elders there at the Faith Temple Church, how do you think 20, 30 years from now people are going to look back at history at this time, at what's going on right now?
They're probably going to have the same view that I had from being born in 1953 and then looking at it. They're going to say this was just a sign of the times. And this is what happened when I was born. And their kids are going to look at it and say, well, I don't understand how you guys put up with that. But him dying in the Black Lives Movement has been a part of our lives, blacks' lives, for a long, long, long time. But it's just starting to come to the forefront because we're all of a sudden organizing and being televised, and people are getting to the point to know and understand what we are doing. So I don't think that my kids' kids will remember Mr. Floyd and what he did, or the Black Lives, because they're going to find a new way of bringing being black and being a person of color to the forefront. Black Lives Matter is just a thing for 2020.
And Rhonda Lee, our chief meteorologist at KOTA Territory News, how do you think people are going to look back at this era, at what's going on right now?
Similarly, why is it still happening? Yeah. Why did it happen? I thought a lot of things had changed. And I think in a lot of ways, things have changed. I would be a fool to say that things haven't improved. But considering how long it feels like we as a black people have been fighting, it feels like it's been forever. But I often have to stop and think that, you know, if we're really real about it, we're finally just on the other side of net zero with slavery in and of itself. We're only a few years removed from us having been in slavery and being out at the same time. Exactly. So there's still a long way to go. Old habits die hard. And that's what I think American racism is. It's a habit. It's been going on for, 400 years? We just can't expect white folks to just stop. I mean, it's gradual. So the changes that happen are going to keep, we're going to keep evolving, I think is our takeaway from this. And there is so much more that needs to be done. So do I have a modicum of forgiveness? I don't know if forgiveness is the word. I think now that there's more awareness, and there are things that need to be changed, but it's just not going to happen in overnight. Now, one would argue, it's been more than overnight. It's been forever. When does this madness end? But again, it is a habit, just like smoking or drugs. And unfortunately, racism is a bad drug.
Bishop Troy Carr from Faith Temple Church. How do you think people are going to look back at what's going on now with George Floyd and everything that's happening these days?
Well, hopefully, when they look back, their time will be better than this time. Excellent. Hopefully, by the time they look back, they will be able to see that things have moved on down the road. Unfortunately, in this time looking back, we don't see much change. We don't see much things different. And as Rhonda said, yes, some things are different. But again, to go back to the Floyd, when you can see a black man killed right in front of you, and when you can see the number of unarmed black people killed and other races have the actual gun in their hand and get arrested, it makes you feel like that things haven't changed. And so my hope is that whatever the future, when they look back, they will have, by that time, seen the change that we're talking about needing to happen right now.
A prime example, if I may, look at the events at the White House when all the people took over the White House. And then you go back to the demonstration for Black Lives Matters. If that had been all black people that took over that White House, it would have been a massacre. I feel that in my heart, because just look what happened when we just marched from where we started to in front of the courthouse. People got beat up, people got gassed, but you never see one gas, one spike, one anything during that raid on the White House, and that's our democracy. That's what marks who we are, the White House. But nothing really, truly happened. And I believe in my heart, had it been all blacks or people of color, it'd have been a massacre. And that's just how we feel right now as being people of color in this world right now. The difference between how I'm treated and how people, non-colored people, would be treated.
Now, Rhonda, people watch you on the weather probably aren't aware of an issue you were involved in back in 2012 that got national attention, an issue that started with a viewer complaint about your hair, your ethnic hair.
Yes. Oh my God. Yeah, that was an interesting time for me. The short version is there was a viewer who said that he didn't like my hair. He wanted to know if I had cancer, or if I were a man, would they let the man grow his hair out? And I politely wrote him back and told him, well, you know, the short version is I like my hair. I feel like I'm a good example for black boys and black girls who want to see themselves on television. And the funny thing is he and I were then friends right after that. But my management of my news company then didn't like that I spoke up, that I talked back. And so I was then fired from my job. And much to my surprise, my incident caught fire just worldwide. I've been the topic of college theses, and when I see the Crown Act, I know for sure that I played a role in that. And just to know that I made a huge difference in this world makes all the difference to me. So that's, I know for sure. That's why you see more black women and black men wearing their hair naturally, at least on TV. And it was scary. It was scary, but I think it also underlined an ongoing issue within the United States, I think, as a whole. Beauty, what is it? You know, is it long hair weaves down your waist like a mermaid, or is it what I have on my hair? I have had to explain to management, not here, in other places, multiple times that my hair, when they asked me, can you grow your hair out? I remember once when I was in New York, I said, yeah, I can grow it out. But black hair defies gravity. It goes up. So when I was growing my hair up, they really meant, can I grow it down? I did not realize that's what they meant. And subsequently, they ended up I was freelance, and they ended up giving the job to another black woman, but she had long hair. And so I think that there have been strides. I know for sure I've made a difference. It was hard. It took me another 2 years to even get an interview in TV after that. And even then, the support, I think, among black people was a little different as well.
That goes back to what we were talking about. If you don't know her, why not ask the question of her instead of taking an assumed idea that her hair is this way for other reasons than...
A nefarious reason.
Yeah.
I mean, people thought I was just being militant. I'm like, no, this is just my hair.
Nobody asked.
All right, we got to take another break. We're happy to have you. So. All right. We'll be back again, back in just a minute, to continue our talk about Black History Month on this month's edition of Focus. And good evening, I'm Jack Caudill. Welcome back to this month's edition of Focus, talking about Black History Month, which is February. Rhonda Lee is the chief meteorologist here for KOTA Territory News, talking about Black history. Is there anybody in that history or anybody now that you look to and say, that's somebody that has really inspired me?
Yeah, my world famous inspiration is my mom. I mean, it is so, nobody knows, her name's Althea, but she is my inspiration. She fought racism within the U.S. government on a regular basis. She has always been my voice in the back of my head, and I know that the struggle is real. And I thank her for all of her sacrifices. Sometimes your inspirations are, pretty simple.
Rich Richardson, one of the elders at the Faith Temple Church. How about you? Anybody that come to mind as an inspiration? Now you mentioned you met Dr. King when you were 10.
Wow. That happened. Somebody said, did you know who that was? And I was 10 years old. I said, no, who was that? I said, that was Dr. King. He would be one. But I think if I had to round it off, here would have been Bishop Lorenzo Kelly, because it was something about that man that made me inspired. When I was younger, it was hanging around older gentlemen, because if you hang around older people, you learn a lot. And I learned at 11, 12 years old how to be the guy I am, the man I am, from listening and watching older black men as they sit around and reminisce and go through the things that they go through. And thirdly, without taking up too much time, I think it would be my mom, Lucille.
And Bishop Troy Carr from the Faith Temple Church. How about you? Who was your inspiration?
It's too many people to name individually, so as a group, I would say my great-great-great-grandparents. They persevered when it was legalized to be owned. They persevered when they weren't considered people, and they made it through the struggle. And the three things that they have taught me, is the way they persevered was through hard work, education, and love of God. And those three things brought them from the shores of Africa to the shores of the United States of America. And that's inspiring, that if they could make it under those conditions, we have it bad, but they have it worse. And if they made it, we can make it.
Now, we talked a lot about change that is made, but a lot of change that still needs to be made.
Yeah.
Are you hopeful that we're going to get to where we need to go?
You have to be. I mean, there's so much against hope, the things that we see and we read, but you have to stay hopeful. You have to keep trying. Otherwise, you're just going to give up, and it never changes. But yes, I am hopeful that things will get better.
How about you, Rich? Were you?
I am very, very hopeful. Because I have a grandson, and I would hope that he's 11 years old now, and I would hope that as he grows up, he won't be concentrating so much on color as he would be on the person he wants to hang out with, the person he wants to be around. It's just somebody he likes to be around and hang out with, instead of worrying about a color so much, like I had to when I was coming up.
How about you, Rhonda? What kind of hope do you have?
I am cautiously optimistic. I think I'm more of a realist, but I do have hope for a better day. I do have hope for a better future, but I do remain cautiously optimistic.
What's it going to take to get there? What's it going to take to get to that point?
Woo! Jack, we only have 2 or 3 more minutes left.
We're getting there. 1 minute.
1 minute
One
left.
minute.
All
Solve
right.
the world's problems.
All
You got
right.
1 minute.
Well, I can do that in 1 minute. Who can't? I think, what would it take? I think there would have to be a wholesale, tangible change. I think with every generation, we get better and better. But I would say that there are so many steps back. And I think for every bit of progress that we've seen just recently, that's why I remain cautiously optimistic. I felt that there was progress, and then 2020 came along, and I thought, well, good gravy. What does it take, Jack? Honestly, what does it take?
Oh, you're right. I would think the Bible is the one place that we're going to find the answer to. And if we start preaching love to each other and stop preaching, you're different because, and you are just like me because I love you.
It's a good note to end on, and that's what we got to do. Bishop Troy Carr, Rich Richardson, Rhonda Lee, thank you guys for coming up. Thank you for joining us. Hope to see you again the first Sunday night of next month. Good night.